I recently got contacted by iAsonu, a now retired Chinese Zerg player who happens to work at SenseTime, one of Asia's largest artificial intelligence companies. He told me that he is working on a bit of a research project there, which is called DI-Star, Decision Intelligence Star, and they're trying to create a bot that is capable of taking down pro players in the Zerg versus Zerg matchup. Similar to AlphaStar, they use a training environment which has hundreds or thousands of AIs which play against one another. For AlphaStar, I remember this being called the AlphaStar League. Well, for DI, it didn't really have a name. He basically explained that there is a very diverse environment in which many AIs play against each other and kind of test each other and try to improve. Some of these AIs are just there to make sure that it's indeed a diverse environment, and others are there to try and maximize their win rate, and they tend to play quite extreme styles, either very aggressive or quite economical. To start with, he sent me an AI that included very many different of these agents. We'll call this modelA. I played a couple of games against modelA and with mixed results. Sometimes I would win, sometimes I would lose. I was already extremely impressed by this because I really did not believe that it was possible for an AI with normal human APM to be able to take me out in ZVZ. Now, I know I'm not the greatest ZVZ player, and I know the games weren't the cleanest, but I still was very impressed by how well it performed. However, iAsonu told me that he wasn't all too happy, all too satisfied with that result, and he challenged me to a best of 3. He said, hey, I will pick 3 models from the hundreds of AI agents, and I will challenge you and see if you can beat me in a best of 3. I, of course, as the competitive player that I am, accepted and started my practice in ZVZ. Now, I have to admit that I was quite nervous. After having played modelA a couple of times, I realized it was completely possible that I would get destroyed. I did try to brush up a little bit of my ZVZ knowledge. I still didn't feel super comfortable in the matchup. And one of the things that I noted while playing against modelA was that modelA tended to be super aggressive in the early game, especially with Lingbane. And this is something that iAsonu explained to me as well, and actually said was one of the challenges that they really struggled with solving. He said that they have 3 main challenges. The first challenge is that AIs are very poor at long time planning. So they can have good reactions in the moment, but for example, trying to fight against units that you require detection in order to spot or a future tech switch, the AI really struggles to kind of anticipate those type of things. The second challenge he mentioned was the fact that the AIs in StarCraft 2 or DI-Star had a very difficult time in deceiving human opponents. Humans, he said, are just a lot more cunning, and the AI often doesn't quite realize the value of denying scouting, which makes deception really difficult. And the third thing he said is that the AI often plays very naive strategies, playing extremely aggressive or playing very economical. He said mainly aggressive rush strategies, especially when it plays Zerg. And he said AlphaStar also had a really weak Zerg, and he believed that Zerg also was the most difficult one to truly make a very powerful artificial intelligence with. So with that all out of the way, let's actually take a look at the game here, as both players start with a very similar opener. Well, I am the human here, of course, beautifully called human. And we have the RL model, which is the Decision Intelligence Star in the top left. Both players opening up with a hatchery first. You see some scouting going down. I actually accidentally sent my second Overlord back. So the initial Overlord spread actually is slightly better here for DI-Star than it is for me. And my plan was to basically play somewhat defensive 3-base Lingbane, but to get a lot more Zerglings in the early game than I usually would get, because I knew of the aggressive tendencies, both of having played against modelA, but also because iAsonu told me about this. So yeah, I have to admit, I also was a little bit nervous. Another thing I actually do want to mention before we truly get into the game is that there are no handmade limitations on it, but the AI by itself kind of floats between 200 and 350 APM. It's because it started learning initially from human replays, and it never truly found the need to increase their APM by too much. There is a calculating time of 100 ms. So the computing speed is about 100 ms, which is 0.1 second. And that is the only real limitation that the AI has. Both players right now getting a Baneling nest, and we see an immediate flood of Zerglings coming out. And this had been pretty much standard. Whenever I played against modelA, it almost always was a Ling Bane in the early game, and well, then some type of Roach play after. So that's kind of what I was expecting here. I was like, all right, I just gotta be safe. I want a higher drone count than my opponent, just get a lot of defensive Banelings, get myself an Evo chamber, and then tech into a Roach Warren as well pretty fast. And actually I get the Roach Warren faster. Now, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Usually you get the Evo chamber quicker, but I was really afraid of everything. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna play a little bit extra safe. I wanna get these roaches out. And once I get the roaches out, I thought, I'm probably going to be safe. Now, a lot of these Lings are showing up. A couple of Banelings are being morphed as well. And one of the cool things of playing against this AI is that the micro of it wasn't super unrealistic. Like, the control of the units actually was one of the things that it was pretty weak in. Often walking into big Baneling shots, not hitting big Baneling shots on my Lings when it definitely was possible. And the AI also seemed to be completely unaware that 2 Banelings of his own could trade against 2 Banelings of mine. And in some situations that is very useful, in others it is a little bit less useful. By the way, after this early game, I'm not quite sure how it happened, but I'm down 5 workers and my opponent has slightly more Lings. Very similar Ling count, but I do feel like I'm a little bit behind already at this point without too much happening. Now, my Ling Bane micro is not the greatest in the world. I do have to admit that. I'm a little bit afraid. I lose 2 Banelings there to a single Baneling. That wasn't super brilliant. You see, there's no real multitasking going on. No Lings trying to run in towards the natural. Just single Banelings being sent forward, trying to get a good detonation onto a clump of Lings. I should probably be a little bit more aggressive with my queen trying to find these. I mean, I have complete vision on the map right now. I do end up building 9 more drones, but I'm already down 12 workers. I started some safety roaches just because I'm afraid, not because it's actually necessary. I mean, I have a queen here at home, I have the same amount of Banelings, and the Ling count is equal, but I'm just afraid and I don't want to die. You know, it really is sick. It kind of felt like I don't want to lose to a stupid computer. I haven't lost to the AI in StarCraft 2 in a very long time. Didn't want that to happen right now when it actually mattered either. So my roaches do end up getting surrounded. I continue building a couple of extra roaches. Take a few gases as well. And so you see the opponent is taking 3 gases, quick layer tech before the Evo chamber. No Roach Warren yet either, which is actually kind of helpful. I get hit by a massive Baneling here and I lose a crap ton of my Lings, which makes him a lot safer than perhaps he should have been. My plan was to go for a little bit of a timing attack, and I just wanted to walk across the map, see if I could do anything. Now I decided, you know what, I probably need a couple of extra drones, so I end up building more drones, start running back home with my Banelings to try and defend. The AI actually is supply block at this point, and you see a lot of overlords being sent across the map as well right now. So there's a bit of a Ling run by over here. Roach Warren going up as well here for the DI star while his layer is finishing. And one of the things that he really liked, or that the AI really liked in previous games, at least modelA, used to love getting a Spire immediately, even if he didn't have that many gases mining yet, and then eventually just go into mass muta. That seemed to be the main plan every single time. Now, both of us being pretty careful here. See a couple of Banelings moving in. I'm like, hey, I think I can bust these. So 2 Banelings, try to get the trait that I want. Well, don't quite get it because I'm an idiot, but altogether, not the worst thing that could have happened. I continue building more and more roaches as I kind of want to bust him pre-muta. I'm like, okay, if I can just get like 10, 12, 13 roaches out on the map, even without roach speed, that should be good enough, especially if I have a couple of Banelings with me. So that honestly just was my entire plan. I do end up losing a lot of Lings here in my 3rd base because there was some big multitasking going on. And still, average APM right now is actually getting a little bit higher, around 422 for the AI, while I'm trying to run across the map. Now, these Banelings are absolutely crucial with this army because I use them to try and blow up Lings that will go for the surround on my roaches. My roach count is very healthy. I have 29 of them. However, I do lose all of my Banelings, and this immediately triggers a response here out of the AI to go back home and start trying to defend this with the Lings. Before, it seemed like a base trade was going to be the solution to his many problems, but now it's like, oh wait, there's no Banelings. I actually think I can send these Lings back home. Surrounds all of my roaches. He's still up about, well, 15 workers to be exact. And the first 8 mutas are on the way. 4th base already going down. I mean, has a crap ton of queens as well. And he actually kind of blasts me here. There's not much I can do. I still have slightly more roaches, but I have absolutely nothing against the Mutas. I only have 3 queens, don't have a Hydra then going down yet. And with the first Mutas popping out as well, I know that my time here for pushing has pretty much ended at this point. I type GG, and the human has left the game, and the first win actually goes to the AI. My second opponent was modelD, and this was considered by iAsonu to be the strongest AI. He said modelD beats modelB and modelC pretty easily. So I decided to play against this bad boy, and I wanted to really get the momentum on my side in the early game. After that last game, it felt like I didn't really have momentum. At times my position was okay. I also decided that if I want to do some type of timing push, I need to be very decisive and work towards it from the start, rather than just randomly building units and then after all being, okay, time to attack. So I came in with more of a plan. Now, like I mentioned, my Zerg versus Zerg isn't absolutely brilliant. It's still pretty okay. Like, we're talking low Grandmaster level, maybe slightly below Grandmaster level on the European server. I was really struggling with modelA already. So I decided a bit of a switch of approach. Like, all right, I'm going to keep momentum on my side and then make sure that it has to react to me. Because in my mind, if it needs to respond to me, it's going to be more difficult. You know, obviously, they know the crap that they do. They'll be in charge with their Link Bane attacks. But if I just send out a lot of links in the early game and then have some tight timings, I kind of hope that I could make it from there. So, yeah, being down 1-0 obviously sucks, because you only have 1 game more to lose and you're practically out. You see, the AI actually opens up kind of optimal in any matchup but ZVZ. This is a fun little fact. Most of the time you would rally into the extractor, like we saw the AI do over here, and actually the same thing that I did as well in every single game. But in ZVZ, it is actually more common to pull 3 workers into gas immediately, so you can start your Zergling speed a little bit faster than usual. This allows for more map control if your opponent doesn't do that. So it's actually just something slightly different, but it is kind of impactful. In this case, it doesn't happen because both of us rallied into the gas, but it's funny to see that both of us made the same mistake. And I know that at high level ZVZ, it's extremely common to just straight up rally into the gas. I'm not the first professional player, by the way, that has played against it. I know there have been other players that played against it. Some have won, but I can tell you that the bot has taken some maps of some very, very high-level Zerg players. I was extremely impressed to hear. Now, I don't want to spoil any names. There might be videos coming out on that in the future, maybe by me, maybe by other people, but yeah, it's just very exciting. It reminds me a lot of when Alpha Star was laddering. And the cool part about the DI Star as well is that everyone can play it. In my description, there will be a link to the GitHub and a little bit of a guide on how to set it up. You guys can then play against the public version, not against the specific model B, C, and D that I'm playing here in this best of 3. But trust me, modelA is pretty darn good already. So if you can consistently beat that, then, well, maybe you're already worthy of a show match against model B, C, and D. It's also interesting to note, by the way, that this is still a work in progress. That's actually, maybe we should focus a little bit on the game. I'll do more of the talking later on. So I sent a couple of links across the map to try and cancel the hatchery. I got 1 cancel off already. I don't think that shows up now. You see 75 minerals lost for my opponent. So I got a little bit of that momentum. And I also decided to just start spamming a crap ton of links. My opponent is doing the same thing, actually has more links. But this time I have a slightly quicker Baneling nest and a really fast Evo chamber as well. And that was the plan. There's a faster Evo chamber, wanting to get that wall up as well. Just get a lot of map control with the early links, try and deny any potential bases. So my first 4 Banes are morphing on in a lot quicker. Let's take a look at the micro here that's going down. There's a couple of Banelings being morphed in aggressive locations, kind of serving as a magnet here for my links to go towards. His first 2 Banes are out. I'm like, hey, I have 4 Banes. You only have 2. If I detonate on top of your Banes, now all of a sudden you have no Banelings left, and I can just right-click your hatchery. So for a second time this game, I get a cancel on the hatchery. I actually kill this morphing Baneling as well. I'm up 6 workers, and it feels like I have the same amount as Link. So I'm just up an entire base and 10 workers at this time. A fantastic start for me. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. However, I'm really still afraid of dying. So I start morphing a couple of extra banelings in the middle of the map. I want to make sure that I don't lose to any big baneling hits. I get my own roach horn, double gases on the way as well. It's my opponent, gets a pretty decent hit here on links and is double expanding right now. Now, I see that one expansion is going down. I'm not aware of this top side also being constructed. And I don't think I realize, honestly, just until now, because I haven't watched these replays yet. So that is somewhat surprising. 18 more links on the way for me. Like I said, I'm afraid I just lost a bunch of links. I gotta try to hold. Now, I have 3 workers here. I have a queen popping out, but I don't actually have that many links out. As my opponent starts flooding more and more links across the map. Banelings joining in as well. And once again, I'm going to be in a little bit of trouble. Just being too eager to continue fighting while there was no real need for me to fight. My third base in a little bit of trouble. I tried to clear all of the banelings. I need to save this third base, because without a third base, my drone lead means absolutely nothing. As it's solid micro coming out of my opponent. One of the things that I noticed as well is that the AI loves to have banelings hidden on top of ramps. So when you run up a ramp with 20 links, very often there's a baneling waiting for you there, and boom, straight up explodes into your face, killing a lot of the links. I get some roaches out once again just because I'm afraid. Not really because I think this is the optimal play. I think that most top Zerg players should be able to hold this with just pure Ling, Bane and Queen defense. But because I'm not a top Zerg player and I'm not too familiar with Ling, Bane micro, I try to hold with just pure Ling, Bane. I get my Glial Reconstitution and I know that I have a faster +1. My plan is to push across the map with a decent eco, with roach speed, and see how much damage I can do. At the same time, we see a quick 5th base coming in as well, and a larger amount of queens. 4 already and a 5th on the way. This is another thing that I noticed, is that the DI star actually is extremely keen on building more queens than most pro Zergs find necessary. This probably adds safety and also gives somewhat of a natural defense in case of the opponent's modelA switch, because you already have some blind queens. And this might be because one of the reasons that iAsonu told me about is that the AI seems to be pretty bad for planning ahead, so it kind of blindly plans ahead by building queens. It's very difficult to say why certain things happen, but you know, if you have a little bit of an imagination, sometimes you can at least make up a decent reason, and I do like it. So here comes my push. I'm down in workers right now, but I have a crap ton of roaches. I am up in upgrade. I'm continuing upgrades as well. My opponent already has Ravagers, but the increased queen count actually make it pretty easy for the DI star to hold this push. And I didn't really expect that. Obviously, this wasn't the brightest roach fight, but right now, once again, I'm down 6 workers, and I'm actually kind of struggling in this game. I see that he doesn't have roach speed, which makes micro for me a lot easier, and I get a bit of a link flank on the queen and a bunch of these roaches. So I do corner him here, get some of these Ravagers. Look at that control here, that individual Ravager being microed back. Very nice stuff, just very, very solid stuff. And now the average APM is about 270 to 280, and it should remain around this number, which is kind of low for a pro player already. I think most pros have between 330 and 420, something along those lines. modelD decides that he can win this fight. I also thought that I could win this fight. modelD was correct. I was wrong. I get pushed back. I get a 4th base. I have continuous roach production. My injects were pretty okay, pretty on point. I was okay with it. I was just so afraid of Muda showing up at any second now. Not because I scouted a Spire, but because I knew that that DI star really likes building Mutalists. So I was just so afraid of dying to 5 Mudas spawning at any moment. I tried to hold this push. We do see that there's no Spire on the way, so my worries were completely unfounded. There's still no roach speed, which means the moment that a push fails, it's going to get completely cleaned up if I actually have a way superior forces. Which doesn't really seem to be the case, as there's a bunch of Ravagers here. I do try to move in and snipe these Ravagers, but I have to continuously dodging these bios, which loses me a fair amount of DPS. More links coming in, I actually eat a couple of bios as well, so not the greatest play out of me, but I do have an upgrade lead. I am up in army supply, or I should almost be up in army supply. I'm just down in workers currently, and down a little bit in income. because of those workers. I decided to add a couple of extra workers, start mining from my 4th base. Of course, he already had that 4th base up for a while. He has that 5th base up for a while already as well. I kind of semi get flanked here, but I'm like, wait, you can't flank me. You don't have the speed. So I decided to just break out on the side where the Ravagers are. I snipe a couple of the Ravagers, and at this point, I believe that I could just win the game. Because, well, I have +2, you have +1. The roach count is in my favor, but I was lacking Ravagers, and I could not quite finish it, but I did manage to get a little bit of a lead here, or at least what felt like a little bit of a lead to me, as I still have that continued upgrade advantage. I also, in my head, truly believed that I was up in eco. I'm not quite sure what that was based on, but yeah, it wasn't really true. I mean, I'm up 3 workers, but that's not a huge deal. Both players still building a lot of roaches. At any point, by the way, the reason why I'm continuously attacking is just because I'm super afraid of a Spire finishing at any point and Mutas popping up. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to need to keep putting on pressure. As long as I keep putting on pressure, I will not get confronted with Mutalisk. And that thought seemed to at least somewhat work, as it's still a pure roach fight. At this point, I'm up an upgrade. Roach counts are extremely similar as well. But for whatever reason, I just keep losing fights and not doing too well. Maybe because I'm continuously fighting on his side of the map, rather than just chilling a little bit, getting some extra drones, getting a defensive position, and maybe setting up some counterattacks or some harassment. Now, this fight I felt very comfortable with. I was like, okay, I surely have more roaches than you here, and I'm up an upgrade. There's no way that I lose this fight, but his reinforcements are slightly quicker to the fight, and once again I get pushed back. He actually walks into one of his own biles. Another thing is that I decided to never use Ravagers. That was a mistake. That was a bug, not a feature of my ZVZ playing. As I wanted to go harass with a couple of these roaches, but as he continued pushing forward, I was like, well, I don't actually think I can afford to send any roaches across the map. I walk up this ramp, see the queens, and as this is still on an old patch, they can actually still transfuse off creep as well. I knew that, so that wasn't much of a surprise. As once again, he eats one of his own biles. Like I said, very often when we think of AIs, it's kind of easy at least to hard program in very proper micro, but that isn't the case here with the Decision Intelligence star. He's relatively smart and doesn't rely too much on micro, although he does seem to be out microing me pretty consistently in every fight. That might say more about my micro than the micro of the AI though, right? He's not the most brilliant micro player. At the same time, he's completely lacking any upgrades. No +2 attack, no glial reconstitution, which is the roach speed, which means that whenever he loses a fight, he's just going to lose a lot more units than he really should. I continue fighting in this position, although I probably should push back or pull back at some point. The longer the game goes, the better the units are going to scale for me. And I decided at some point I'm going to need to add a couple of Ravagers into my army. My gas count is growing as well, and I say, hey, if his Ravagers perform so well, then perhaps if I get a couple of Ravagers, I also need to start adding these in. Getting pretty close to being broken here though. 4 Ravagers still pushing forward. There's 1 queen killing overlords. This is a move that this AI seems really keen on as well, by the way. Just killing overlords in the middle of the map continuously. So another queen shows up. There's still 4 queens total. 2 of those are now halfway across the map. So it has truly been learning from the best. At least in ZVP it has been very common for a long time to to send queens across the map. And this really is the issue. The moment you have to move back and you don't have roach speed, you're just going to get absolutely blasted. And that's just what happened here. Even on creep, I mean, I also get the creep speed bonus. I decide for the first time to not chase immediately. I add a couple of Ravagers and I actually start thinking about what my next move is. So it felt like this entire game was just one long fight and pure panic for me. I'm like, hey, what are they weak against? Right. Invisible units. Harassment from invisible units. There's no way there are overseers prepared. I'm just feeling pretty good about this, you know? So I set that up. I see if I can take a fight at the same time as well. I notice my roach count is a little bit bigger. I have a bunch of Ravagers and I still have superior upgrades. And with the Ravagers, finally, I truly managed to kind of push through. I mean, the roach count is just super favorable for me at this point. I'm still up that 1 upgrade. And once you're in between reinforcement lines, it is really easy for the attacking Zerg player to finish the game. So I start killing drones here. My tunneling claws and my burrow is on the way. Getting a 5th base at this point as well. I'm just feeling good about life, as I know that I'm representing the humans here, and the humans need to win. Or at least I felt like the humans needed to win. Of course, iAsonu helping out his AI as well by picking the proper agent. So it's truly just AI plus human against one human. So far the score seems to be 1-1, as I do just win this game. Now the AI is pretty slow at leaving games. I think I might send him some encouragement in a little bit, you know, to just get out of the game a little bit faster. But yeah, it's quite interesting. What I was going to say earlier is that one of the funny things that IA told me was that he said, well, when I was a player, often, yeah, here comes the encouragement to the AI, just helping him to get out of the game, really. He told me that when he was playing, he sometimes couldn't beat players, and his goal really was to build an AI which he could use to beat the players that he couldn't beat during his pro career, which I just thought was really cool. It's kind of cute and I don't know, really fun. I thought it was a cool setup. Another thing is that it's not the end of the development, so he's going to continue developing it, and his goal really is to just continuously challenge pro players with improved agents to see if he can beat them with it. And well, he's been doing a good job, but this time around not good enough to beat the human power, that is me, as I sniped the main base as well. I think the AI didn't quite get the hint of, you know, being forced to leave the game, so I just have to kill every single building. I guess in some of the training, the best way to get a very high win rate is to never leave the game until all of your buildings truly disappear. That's just kind of what happens here. It's like whenever I won a game, same against ModelA, I would have to just kill every single building, which is a little bit time intensive, but I don't mind it. I get to bask in my own glory for a little bit more. So I see my roaches running around. You know, I'm maxed. I throw down a spire just for fun. I don't really need it. And at this point, I think he gets revealed. And then I start killing this extractor in the main. Extractor and roach run in there. So yeah, there we go. modelD has not rebuilt their base and is being revealed. And I take my first win in the best of 3. There's still one drone around somewhere. Where are you, Mr. Drone? Oh no, I just died. Probably by these roaches. Poor fella. Yeah, so the extractor gets taken out. Score is 1-1 as the human wins. And we'll be heading into the final game between the human and the AI. And just like that, we're in game number 3, where for the 3rd time in a row, I'm the only one that says good luck, have fun. Maybe this AI can teach me a thing or two about playing StarCraft 2, but I can definitely teach this AI a thing or two about just basic manners. It seems to be lacking those. And good luck, have fun goes a long way, my friend. So right now I'm facing off against modelC, once again on new repugnancy, so same map as against modelD. The 3 maps that I played against this AI so far were Kingscough, Kairos Junction, and New Repugnancy. But I didn't get Kingscough rolled against modelC. I think it just rotates between these 3 maps. I'm not entirely sure how it works. I didn't ask all the difficult questions. You know, I just wanted to play some games. You guys can ask the difficult questions if you're looking through the code and trying it yourself. Like I said before, in the description down below, you can try it yourself, and there's also a link to the code if you, but for whatever reason, you want to look at lines of things that I absolutely do not understand what they mean, then go ahead and be my guest, but I would not recommend it. Trust me, I tried deciphering some of that, and if you've never coded before in your life, it just makes 0 sense whatsoever. Anyway, let's take a look at this game. Once again, both players opening up with a hatchery first. We see a pool coming down on my side, a pool coming down on his side as well. And I actually kind of want to focus this game on what the AI is going to be playing, more so than what I will do. I mean, my Zerg is all nice and fun, but what are the ideas behind this AI? What does he like to do? Now, this modelC, I learned afterwards, is a rather aggressive one, which is known for his powerful Ling Bane timing of 2 bases, to be exact. I did not know this beforehand, but afterwards iAsonu told me, yeah, the modelC has one of the strongest Ling Bane all-ins, or very heavy committed at least to the Ling Bane, and you need to be very well prepared for it, and now we'll see if I actually am going to be very well prepared for it. We see faster gas as well for modelC, so this time he actually did pull into gas. That's going to allow him to get the faster speed, at least faster than what I had. Pretty quick Overlord, by the way, very uncommon. And also he's just floating a bit of gas for no reason. You saw that? He was just floating like 150 minerals, 130 gas, and then only starting the speed about 5 to 6 seconds later than he already could have. There was no real cost to that, but he still did it. Usually yeah, you get the third overlord. Like I was saying earlier, a little bit slower as well. I think the way that my build order here worked actually was slightly better than what my opponent was doing. You see, I have a little bit more minerals as well, so I actually did do a better job. Faster queens as well on my side. He immediately starts a third queen. Cool to see, but I start a third base immediately, and I will also start a baneling nest straight away after. My opponent actually gets a baneling nest. It looked like he wanted to send out a drone towards the third base to build a hatchery, but that was a fake. I'm not sure who he was trying to fake out. He just attacked the unbuildable rocks there for a second. This definitely is copied behavior from a player. So yeah, I mentioned this before, but honestly, the AI is really, really keen on doing this. The iStar just loves killing my overlords, and I wasn't quite ready for it. I ended up losing this overlord and kind of getting supply block. I do have 14 links on the way, as I had a similar plan as versus the Model D. I said, hey, what happens if I just build a lot of links and a couple of banes on the map? I also was not aware of the fact that there was no third base, because I lost my overlord and then I didn't check if there was a third base, yes or no. So I just rally all of my links across the map right now and try to deal some damage, while I actually needed to be the one defending, because, well, let's face it, if you're up a base, there's no real need to attack. A couple of banelings being hidden right here, and although iAsonu said that he's not great at deception, these are some good hidden banelings that are going to be very, very useful, because I hadn't spotted those. And now I'm like, oh crap, Bane's over here already. I hope I can deal with these. Send in 2 links to detonate the first Bane, 2 more links to detonate the second, but it doesn't quite work. I don't have a third queen yet. I try to target down the Banelings as well as I can. I decide to just let it shoot on my drones. And as a result, I end up losing 4 or 5 workers here. So not the most brilliant play out of me. It was really cool to kind of see the way he used the Baneling to damage the drones and then started clicking the drones like he was an actual player. Often you see AIs just do something random, like explode a Baneling in drones, not kill the drones, and then the links continue attacking the links of the opponent. But we actually saw a conscious sacrifice here of the links to kill drones, making a very worthwhile trade for the iStar. And not so great for me. I've now figured out that indeed there was a base going up here. There's a couple of links moving around the map. I try to get the cancel. I do believe I get it. So I'm still up a base, but I'm slightly down in workers. Once again, I'm getting a little bit aggressive for, well, no real apparent reason. I'm also a little too close for comfort into getting hit by one of these 3 banelings. It scares the crap out of me just watching this back. A couple of links are being sent across the map as well over here. I think I'm actually in a pretty decent position, and I continue the aggression. A couple more links, trying to kill as many of these banes as I can. So once again, I'll be sending in some links. He continues building links as well. So it's really just a very extensive link bane war over here. As boom, big baneling hit on 8-9 of my links. The same time, a little bit of a run by here. I'm not quite ready for it. I have to pull my drones. I'm down in workers already. The control on these links is good. The control of the links at home is not quite as brilliant, so I do end up getting 6-7 of these links, and my final baneling doesn't achieve very much. I keep sending in more and more banelings while I'm down 10 workers. I did not realize this at the time, but I actually was pretty significantly behind in workers already at this point. I get a layer. I have a slower upgrade as well. His +1 is already done. I haven't even started it yet. So at this point, I'm practically dead. I am not aware of this because in my head, I'm up a base. I'm like, well, as long as I keep building units, and I was up a base for a while, I'm probably fine. But as you can see in the income, and especially the gas income, I'm just down so freaking much. He starts his carapace upgrades already as well. I decide to split some links, see if I can do something here. I clear one of the banelings, try to kill some drones, and right now I'm like, oh crap, there's drones here already. That's probably not great for me, as 2 banelings kill the majority of my links once again, and I try to pop in with a couple of banes of my own. Get stuck in the main base here. Try to snipe a queen, but his baneling comes to the rescue. And here I try a move that is really common. High level StarCraft 2. You split off a couple of units to morph them into banelings. And I decided, you know what, I think I can do that and try to kill some drones as a way to get back into the game. At the same time, I also scalped the Spire. My opponent didn't really try to block that. He also does not notice that I have some links hiding in his main base, turning into banelings. So this is overall very, very good for me. I'm a big fan of this, how this is going so far. There are a couple of links just waiting around. I'm not quite sure why they're over here. Okay, now they're getting pulled towards the front. And And as his carapace isn't quite done yet, I can still somewhat engage into this, but once the banelings hit me, I really can't. My 2 banelings move in. I think I killed like 7 or so workers here. So honestly, kind of evening up the score, but I'm still down in upgrades. My opponent will have way faster Muta, and I'm still down about 9 workers as well, so not the greatest start. I do know that there's Muta on the way though, so I start my queen production, and I decide that I want to play a late game right now. I'm like, okay, I'm behind. I will never be capable of countering the Mutalisk, which honestly, all of that really does suck. But what happens if the game actually goes long? Up until this point, I have never played a proper late game against the AI, but in my head, he's going to suck pretty hard at it. Bad at anticipating things, probably not great Viper control is what I fear. I'm like, alright, how are they going to deal with Lurkers? Like, Lurker is a very tricky unit to fight against. And in my head is also the Infestor. The Infestor is a unit that is just going to be absolutely brilliant, right? It has a spell, the Fungal Growth, which either continuously forces you to move away with your Mutalisk, or you just get hit by a fungal and you'll lose all of your Muta. So although I'm behind, in my mind, as long as I can survive, I actually believe that I have a chance. So that honestly just is my plan, is to not die and to survive. Make sure that all of my overlords are nicely set up as well. I probably should have been spreading some creep, getting a couple of spores. That is a little bit sloppy. I'll admit to that immediately. As right now, he could just be killing loads of workers, could probably be trying to dive on top of some queens. That's exactly what's happening here. As my first queen was already falling. Try to pull all of my queens towards this area. I'm kind of trying to bait these Mutalisks into not going for mineral lines and instead just chasing my roaches. I'm like, as long as my mineral lines are safe and as long as I'm not losing my queens, life ain't all that bad. But the Muta count is rapidly growing here. So let's just follow here for a second exactly what modelC is doing. He's just going to be moving around with these Mutalisks. You see continued gas income being added. I think an extra extractor. Wait, where's this extractor being built? Oh, excuse me. So an extra extractor at the 4th base that isn't quite there yet. And they say he's bad at anticipating. No, he's already taking the extractors at the 4th. I did not have a spore in the main base, and he checked every single base and went into the main, so there was no spore there. Kills a bunch of workers. Decided to defend with Hydras. But, well, it's not the greatest defensive unit against the Mutalisk. Ling run by in my natural as well, but I do manage to eventually deal with it. As, yeah, the Mutalisk count is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. My +2 is a lot faster than my opponent's. My opponent does have Glial Reconstitution on the way, or done already, for the roaches as well. So I'm really just in a way inferior position. I have a worse roach count than my opponent, as I try to go for another Baneling run by. I actually think I got some workers here as well. I hit some Banelings over here and then went in. But yeah, I have less roaches, and he has 15 Mutas against 6 Hydra. So I'm just down 50 supply. I still decide to try and stay in. I obviously don't want to lose. I'm like, okay, just going to add more spores. Spore on my main base. And then eventually I can throw down an infestation pit and maybe get something else going. We have my 6th extractor finally on the way, while my opponent is already on 7 extractors. Long distance mining from it while his 4th is being constructed. More Mutas being built here as well. 18 Mutas as I continue my own Hydralisk production. The only unit that I trust at this point. I think right now I might still be thinking of doing a bit of an all-in. I'm like, hey, if I can all-in with pure Roach Hydra Queen and kind of waddle across the map, how would that be? But the moment I start my spores, I think from here on out, my plan is to get an infestation pit. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to play very defensive. I need to tech into Lurkers eventually, but first I want to get some Infestors out and more Hydras. At the same time, we see DI Stars messing up Roaches behind this. So he's going for a push with 21 Mutas and 35 Roaches. I am completely unaware of this. Right now, he's kind of reached his absolute peak. He is right now... He's not going to get much stronger than this, right? He's maxed. He has a crap ton of Roaches. Has +2 on the way. I guess you could wait for that upgrade, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. I am going to increase in strength pretty rapidly from this point on, but my opponent isn't. So this would be the ultimate timing for him to attack. But for whatever reason, he's not deciding to do that. And I don't quite understand why. Like, he's just floating money and allowing me to get back into the game. And I guess usually with the Mutalisk harass, he just kind of gets a win against the other AIs, or it just stays like this for a long time. Maybe he needs some other type of trigger. He's like, hey, I'm up a base. Why would I attack into a 3-base Zerg if I am on 4-base myself? Like, I'm not quite sure what the reasoning is, of course, here, but starting to float a lot of money. I'm getting Burrow, Roach Burrow. I'm like, hey, maybe with some Roach Burrow harass, no way he has Overseers at home. No way he has, you know, he knows that if I burrow the roaches that they're still going to be there. I'm kind of hoping that the AI doesn't understand object permanence in a way, which might be a little bit naive out of me, but yeah, it is what it is. I get my own lurker den up as well. I have all the Hydralisk upgrades. Actually, I don't have the speed yet, do I? No, I do. So I have the Hydra speed, the Hydra, the grooved spines as well. So I'm actually feeling pretty good. First 3 infestors are out, and now my plan is to just fungal absolutely everything and win the game. 5 overseers are being created, God knows why. Maybe he checked and saw that the roach warren was moving, so he knows that tunneling clause is out. I sent 6 roaches across the map. With 3 roaches, you can one-shot a drone. I'm kind of lucky that there's not a single overseer over here, by the way. These overseers are all getting split up, go towards the top side, and I decided to take this forward base as well at the same time. And here comes my harassment. I'm almost max at this point. I'm getting better carapace upgrades. And only at this point, now that he's only up 30 supply, he decides to move out. Does not try and defend any of my harassment. See, I'm shift clicking a lot of this crap. I'm like, hey, if I can hold this push and I can kill 20, 30 workers on his side, I'm actually going to be in a good spot. And my Hydra's moving in. I try to fight some of these roaches, but then the Muta's coming from the back. I'm like, hey, I can hit this with a big fungal. I hit a very big fungal, catching every single Mutalist. But sadly, there's no tanking here for my Hydra. So I'm trying to build more roaches to get some tanking going, but I practically lose everything. He also loses all of his Mutas. I kill a crap ton of workers at the same time. We get into this really weird scenario where I am up in income, and I probably have better tech at this point as well, but I'm sadly not really going to be able to survive for too much longer, as with the bank that he was building for a while already, manages to just remax instantly, and I have no bank whatsoever. My roaches are all coming from different directions. I want to keep my forward base, but I can't keep my forward base. Starting to build Hydras, trying to get lurkers out, but I know it's just not going to be enough. As more Mutas are flying in right now, I have no anti-air remaining. I've half his roach count as well. The only advantage I have is, well, the lurker then, and the fact that I have a hive, but that really is it. Just like that, I have to tap out, say GG, leave the game, and I lost to a freaking computer. Ay. Very painful for me, but honestly also pretty fun. It was a very cool experience. I'm obviously going to practice more against it, see if I can take it out in the future. Maybe there will be more show matches between the different models and professional players once he improves them a little bit. Right now, he said he feels pretty confident that he can take out a lot of people, but I truly believe that iAsonu's goal is to eventually take out some of the best, and then we're talking Serral and Raynor. I'm not quite sure how realistic it is. It obviously is not quite there yet. It's not up to par to the very top Zergs. I mean, I managed to take a game of it, but it's looking very, very good. And it's cool to see that there's some machine learning AI again. We kind of missed that after Alpha Star. So thanks all so much for watching this video. If there's any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. And if there's any questions that you liked, like put the thumbs next to it, so then for better visibility. And perhaps I'll just answer them in the comments, or I'll answer them in a future video, because I have a pretty direct line to iAsonu. He's very responsive as well. He's been nothing but great during this entire process, messaging me, answering my questions, helping me install things, because let's face it, I'm not the most technical guy. I need someone to hold my hand through everything. So he really helped me. Big shout out to him and his company as well, of course, for putting this together. I believe it's a research project. He said he's the only guy that's working on it full time, but there's about 10 other people that have worked on it or work on it every now and again. So it's a pretty big effort. It's really cool to see. I'm just very excited that it's here. I'm looking forward to see what it can perform in the future. If you did like this and find it interesting, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And thank you, iAsonu. Much appreciated, buddy.